We're switching things up today. Most videos that I make revolve around NBA players, but today we're taking a look back at high school basketball, so we can find the most viral high school mixtapes of all time. And by that I mean the mixtapes that brought in the most views and that the most people saw. And I'm sure some of these are players you haven't seen or heard about in a long time, so we'll get into the first 10 after a couple of honorable mentions, like Derrick Rose. And he had to be mentioned because his mixtape is by far one of the craziest out there, but his senior season in high school was over 14 years ago, and his Hoop mixtape was put out 11 years ago in 2009, and it's received 1.9 million views. All I'm saying is YouTube and social media wasn't as big back then, and if it was put out now with what he was doing in it, I'm sure it probably would belong somewhere on this list. I mean, looking at these highlights, high school senior Derrick Rose was doing the same type of stuff that Chicago Bulls Derrick Rose was doing. Then Julian Newman takes a spot for our other honorable mention, because for as good and as viral as he was, I mean, we're looking at high school mixtapes, and all of his viral mixtapes came before he technically got to high school, so we left him off the list. I mean, he's been playing varsity ever since 5th grade, and honestly, he's still a great player, having averaged 32, 5, and 5 the past 2 seasons. But since he's only 5'7" and his NBA career isn't looking promising anymore, he's become less and less viral every year. I mean, there's a ton of videos of a young Julius Newman in the 5th through 8th grade with 3 to 5 million views, and some with 12 to 18 million views. But his 6th grade mixtape has 5 million views, 7th grade has 4 million, but his junior year 11th grade mixtape only has 64,000, and his recently released senior mixtape has 10,000. So you can see why he's only an honorable mention. But with that said, now on to the real list with number 1, Thon Maker, whose Hoop mixtape seemed like it got viewed by anyone who was a basketball fan, and I would have thought it had a lot more views looking back, but right now his most popular one is sitting at 2.2 million views. And this video really didn't seem real at the time. Now that might be because he was possibly a 20-year-old man playing with a bunch of high schoolers, which we'll still never know, but let's just assume that that isn't the case. And either way, he was still labeled as a freak of nature and possibly the next Kevin Durant because he was 7 feet tall at 16 years old, dunking on everybody, blocking shots, crossing over players half his size, making threes and driving to the hoop like a guard. And even though he hasn't turned into what was expected of him since joining the league, his high school tape really was a preview of what his generation of players would become, being positionless players like they are today. Number 2, Lonzo and LaMelo Ball. Now it'd be easy to say that maybe these two shouldn't have made the list because they were only so popular because of all the attention the media gave them for being 3 brothers and all the extra attention LeVar Ball attracted, but don't forget these 3 brothers got all the attention first for being such great players in high school, then everything else after that followed. And of course it all started with Lonzo for playing at such a high level as a 6'6" point guard as a senior, with his ability to score with ease while being a great passer that had top tier defense at his level, which led to him becoming the top point guard in the nation. And his mixtape, where he puts all of that on display, including one of the nastiest crossovers you'll ever see, has over 3.7 million views. And all the attention helped LaMelo get recognized too when he started to break out the next year, and with some big help from his 91-point game that has over 11 million views on YouTube, and this viral half-court shot that really started it all. And now his sophomore year mixtape has gotten over 2.3 million views and was one of the biggest things that put him on the map, really for NBA scouts. And the same goes for number 3 in Zion Williamson and his viral mixtape. Himself and LaMelo have been 2 guys that got most of their popularity and recognized on a national level simply through their high school highlights and mixtapes. And by the end of his junior season, most NBA fans and scouts were aware of who Zion was. But if you weren't, you definitely already knew him by his senior year, where he was getting compared constantly to LeBron James, and it led to his mixtape drawing over 3.7 million viewers. And I mean, even at this point, we all pretty much knew Zion was gonna go first overall after he completed his 1 year of college. So he got all the attention through being by far the best high school player in the country, and being known as the guy who was a future first overall pick. And it was impossible not to think so. He was 6'8", over 250 pounds, doing windmills, 360s, 360 between the leg dunks in games, and really looked like a grown man playing with a bunch of kids. And him playing in his rookie season really looked just the same as how he was playing in high school. Things turned out a little differently though for Austin Rivers at number 4. His mixtape had 4.2 million views, and he was also at one point thought of as the best overall player in the nation over guys like Bradley Beal and Anthony Davis. Thanks to looking like a real-life 2K player with a killer instinct, a killer crossover, the ability to dunk on anyone as a 6'3 guard, hit threes and finish around the rim. I mean, in high school he was playing just like John Wall does, and it looked like he was headed straight for the NBA to be an all-star in no time, and that's why his video got as much love as it did. But if you've only seen Austin play in the NBA and never saw this mixtape, I'm sure hearing and seeing all this is a lot to take in right now, because as we know, he's nowhere near the player that he was in high school, and that was where he peaked. He did play a solid 1 year at Duke and averaged 16 a game, but it was there that it became clear that his game still needed some work in certain areas. But he still left Duke after 1 year, entered the NBA draft, went 10th overall, and without a doubt has never been anything more than a role player since then. And it makes things very clear that he should have stayed at Duke for a couple more years to work on all those holes in his game. And I mean, it makes no sense why he didn't. It's not like he was in a rush to get to the league, but now it's a mistake that he's still paying for today. Either way though, there's no doubt that he has one of the craziest high school mixtapes of all time. And so does number 5 in Kyrie Irving, whose mixtape was able to accumulate 5 million views, and for good reason. He was easily the best overall point guard in the country after his senior year, and the number 2 overall prospect, because as you can tell from his mixtape, his handles and ability to finish at the rim were nearly just as good as they were once he got to the NBA. And at his size and skill level, they were the best we've ever seen from a high school prospect. And you can really tell just how good he was in high school, because due to injury, he only played 11 games at Duke and still got drafted 1st overall. They went to the Cavs and averaged 18 and 5 as a rookie. So there really wasn't much playing time for him between graduating and joining the league. I mean, some guys in this video we never hear of again after the mixtapes, but Kyrie stayed at a very high level ever since then. Number 6, Andrew Wiggins. As of right now, his mixtape has nearly 7 million views, and in high school, he was in a similar situation to Zion. During his senior year, it was pretty clear that he was going to be the number 1 overall pick once he did his 1 year at Kansas and the draft came back around. And I mean, this video speaks for itself. Most of us remember seeing it and how wild it looked, seeing a 6'8", 17-year-old who was also compared to LeBron James for how well he played in high school. We also know that Wiggins has never lived up to the hype that this very video set him up for all those years ago. And that's why the draft is tricky, because even in this video he was clearly a better athlete than most players were in the NBA. And he still is to this day, but his career so far has shown just how much pure athleticism can be deceiving. I mean, when you're that size with that level of strength, agility, speed, and with that vertical leap, it means that all the tools are there to be a generational level player. And like LeBron has shown, it just takes the skill and mental aspect of the game to get there. But Andrew Wiggins still hasn't put all that together. His senior year mixtape though, without a doubt goes down as one of the best we've seen. Then number 7 is a guy named Marcus Lovett, who at one point or another you probably heard about back in the day, because his top mixtape has over 7.8 million views. If you haven't heard of him though, it's because his career's really gone nowhere since then, but we'll get to that in a second. In his mixtape though, he really had Kyrie Irving level handles, was a flashy passer, and could finish around the rim with ease. And the craziest part about all of this was that this mixtape was from his sophomore year. He was doing all of this in the 10th grade, and that's what got so much hype around him and this video back then. He was without a doubt good enough to go viral as a sophomore, but by his senior season, still standing at 6 feet tall, he had dropped down to the 14th best shooting guard in the country and the 97th overall player in his class, which led to him going to St. John's for 1 year before dropping out midway through the next to go play overseas. And he's really been off of most scouts' radars since then. He played in Serbia in 2018 and 19 and had a decent year, but as far as I could tell, hasn't played any basketball since then, and I couldn't find any info out there on why. Number 8, Akil Carr. Now, if you know anything about high school mixtapes, then you've seen the Akil Carr mixtape at one point or another. First of all, to just let this be known, it was reported that a 5'6" Akil Carr had a 48-inch vertical, which allowed him to dunk and block people like he did. And if it wasn't that, he was crossing up every single person on the court at one point or another, and either finishing easily at the rim or passing to an open teammate. I mean, in terms of high school players, he was one of the best and flashiest in the country. Sports Illustrated even said, he has explosive speed, electric ball handling skills, and court vision that would rival Steve Nash's. while ESPN said that he was one of the quickest and most explosive players in the country without a doubt, but his shot and turnovers were still concerning. Even with that though, he had over 28 scholarship offers by the end of his sophomore season. I do think that scouts thought he would grow a little bit more though, because he only grew 1 inch to 5'7" by the time he graduated, and a lot of his problems as a player still existed. He still had a chance to make the league though, but that all really went down the drain when he decided to pass on scholarships from Memphis, Texas, and UConn to play in the D-League so he could start making money. And after his first year on the 87ers, he asked for his release from the team because of a lack of playing time. Went undrafted in 2014 and has been playing overseas ever since then. I mean, for as bad as college is about not giving players money, it's really what he needed to do. It would have given him time to work on his game, while the D-League just let him compete and not get any better. Then number 9 is the GOAT of high school mixtapes, in John Wall. It's one that's pretty much unanimously talked about as the greatest of all time. I mean, how could it not? As a point guard, there was not a single thing John Wall's game lacked in it. Alright, well, besides maybe a jump shot. But honestly, almost no star players have a jump shot in high school. It's something that comes later on. And even in Derrick Rose's mixtape, he still had nothing on what John Wall was doing. To see a player at his size, as athletic and as fast as he was, dunking like he could, and with the court vision of an NBA player, was something never before seen. And in 2009, when John graduated, he was 19 years old, which would have made him eligible for the NBA draft. And rumor had it that if he would have entered the draft that year, he was still gonna go number 1 overall ahead of Blake Griffin. But he wanted to do 1 year at college, so he joined Kentucky and then still went first overall in 2010. And finally, for number 10, we have 7th Woods, whose Hoop mixtape has 15 million views, making it by far without a doubt the most viewed high school mixtape of all time. And I mean, this one makes sense because it looks very similar to John Wall's senior year mixtape. The only thing is that at the time, 7th was 14 years old in the 9th grade. So everyone wanted to watch to get a look at the guy who could be the next greatest player in the country. I mean, if he was doing these things in the 9th grade, everyone assumed and hoped that he would be that much better and improve dramatically every year like he was supposed to do. But that never happened. He got all the internet fame for being as great of a flat out athlete as he was, but unlike a guy like John Wall, he wasn't a fantastic player to go along with that. Instead, as a senior, Woods was a 4-star recruit and the number 14 point guard in the class of 2016. He did go on to play for North Carolina, but never started a game and averaged 1 point a game for his 3 years there. He's expected to play for South Carolina next year, but obviously that'll probably be the last that we see or hear from 7th Woods. So as you can tell, some of the most viral high school mixtapes have been previews of some of the all-time great NBA players, while others were highlights of how some athletes really just peaked early on. And you gotta think that things like this is what makes scouting tough for college and NBA scouts. But go ahead and comment if there was anyone in this video that you may have heard about a long time ago and forgot about until just now. Drop a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.